Bring the meeting to order, please. So you know, Frank, on a roll here. All right. Public, please sign in. Record your presence. On that. We've got an agenda in front of us, and any additions, deletions, corrections? Need a minute?
No, I'm good. We would like to include under staff comments, a presentation of our lead sampling protocol for discussion. And we also have an executive session planned for discussing potential litigation.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments for the agenda? First of all, I'd like to welcome Kevin. Kevin Baker is our new board member. And sent out an email to kind of give his background. If anybody has a question for him, or you want to say anything more to start with?
I don't want to take up too much time with my personal background, but feel free if you have a question. Otherwise, I think I met everybody. Yeah, but I get that.
Well, Kevin, it's a tradition that a new board member takes everybody out for dinner tonight.
I heard that.
Probably didn't know about that.
No.
He said,
But when they restore the Buckeye Tavern.
okay, first order of business is the minutes from the February 22nd board meeting, and thank you very much for getting those out in such a timely manner. We'll get that out. Everybody had a chance to review those?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes of February the 22nd.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of the meeting. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah, no, I'm abstaining.
Any abstentions?
I wasn't there.
And I also abstained because I was not present at that. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think we did that before. Approved. Public comments. Any public have any comments to make regarding non-agenda items? Okay. Action discussion items. First of all, we'll start with the finance and administration. There's January. You want to explain the process we're going to go through right now with regard to updates?
Yeah, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're trying to get caught up. Normally, the financials will be presented at the second meeting of each month. Last month, we did year-end December. Now we're doing January. So at the next meeting in 2 weeks, we'll be all caught up, and we'll have February available. So.
Yes.
No,
And I throw a caveat on to that. Some of that depends on anything that creeps up with the audit, because we really have a tight deadline on the financial statements and the audit, and we're looking at the city audit, city statements right now, so I'm just, that possibility that may creep through February and delay that a little. Just, I don't want it that way, but it could turn out that way. And right now, anything that, with respect to the audit, we are paying attention to first and prioritizing.
Okay. Board members on the committee, the audit committee, finance committee, 10. Did Dina change her mind?
I'm not aware.
So, anybody else? I think Linda, I'd asked you if you would participate in the finance committee as well. And we'd like to offer that to one more person, if possible, on the board. We throw Kevin in by fire. We get some financial savvy. Right?
Some.
All right. So, all right, we'd like to have you participate in the finance committee as well.
Okay.
All right, so, yeah, 3 now, so I'll help you with the audit. Do you have a time when the next meeting is going to be, or the time when you want the board to be present for that?
My belief is that they will be attempting to reach out to the board at the end of March.
Okay.
Now, that, again, that may be delayed because of their schedule and just some of the things that are taking place on the audit schedule. We have not had any issues, but there's just a lot of work to be done, and some of the work is like we go over into some of the grace period that we don't think we can begin with, so.
Okay. So do we want to review the information on the pink sheets that we have in front of us?
Well,
Any highlights?
I was hoping to go through a little bit of a presentation that will support the pink sheets.
Excellent. Ready to do that now? Monitors are all clear?
Yes,
Debris?
unfortunately, we have to get them on the new
And you can be impressed with
I
our
have
meeting
read.
equipment, but our teleconferencing equipment is a little less impressive.
But we are working on that.
That's pretty good.
We're going to take a look at January, and I'll preface before we get into all of the details with, we have an annual budget, and we don't have a really phased budget by month. It's just the budget is divided up into 12 incremental periods, so that automatically subjects it to phasing differences and timing differences. So I just want to throw that out so that everybody is aware as we're going, we're 1/12 of the way into a full year, so.
Is that how it has been historically done, and it's basically been spread fairly
It
evenly
has
amongst
been,
all?
yeah, it has been spread evenly. I mean, to my knowledge, they just did an annual budget. To my knowledge, they did not devise any kind of phasing, quarterly phasing, monthly phasing. Quite frankly, we will get to that, but I'm not prepared to do that right now. So this is some more preface. I mean, we want to do this on a monthly basis so that we can understand at least where we are, make some value judgment on what that all means. I mean, to be honest with you, where you are is relative to where you're going, and we're attempting to wrap into this whole process of forecasting situation that will allow us to see what the year looks like. I'm not there yet, but I'm working on building a forecast so that we can sit and see, here's where we are year to date, here's what the rest of the year looks like, and is that good or bad? So anyway,
Question, both Allentown and the suburban group, are they both up on the same wavelength in terms of your comments?
yes, yes. Yeah, no difference between either one. So just some things as a prelude to getting into some of the numbers. On the city side, for January, we ended up with a loss. Net position went down by $416,000. That means that we did a little worse than budget and worse than last year. Debt service coverage ratio, we're at 103, and obviously the target is 1.20. So at this point in time, 1.1, we're a little bit lower than budget and last year. On the suburban side, we did show positive net income. The net position went up by $3,000. We were better than budget, but lower than last year. And on the debt service coverage ratios, we finished at 2.09. That's better against the budget of 1.89, but down from last year's 2.66. Okay. This gets a little bit busy, and if you remember the last time that we discussed, Dina was keenly interested in having some of the explanations kind of bulleted right to the line item on the statement. So I did that, and I gotta be honest, I'm struggling with the size, but I'm throwing this format out, and y'all can tell me whether you like it or don't like it. To me, I think it's a little bit busy, but I'm sure that we can find another. I don't like it.
Nobody can
We
see
could
it.
print it on bigger paper. That would make it easier to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. To be honest with that, I would, the best way might be to divide this thing up, so that we can take the line items and do them on a bigger size basis, and then you can actually see it on the screen as well as on a piece of paper.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of sensing that, so.
3% today, all right?
I can't
But it's a
see
great
the
start.
bottom.
So anyway, as we look at operating revenues, and we're talking about the city division right now, we're lower in budget by about 7%. Now, as we broke out the revenue, residential water revenues were lower for the month, and municipal wastewater revenues were lower, and they were the principal drivers on the revenue side. Now, compared to last year, we were up by 13%. And that's because of higher residential, higher commercial water, and higher municipal wastewater revenue. So down the budget, up to last year. On the operating expense side, lower than budget by 7%. Actually, we had lower spending on utilities, lower spending on maintenance, lower spending on supplies and equipment. Now, a lot of that is driven by timing. So I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that that's kind of a permanent year basis, because I know that they had scheduled some purchases later on in the year, and quite frankly, as we got into January, we were behind on a purchasing person too, so that slowed a lot of activity down. So we got the benefit of that. That probably play out in the first quarter, and we'll start to see that creep back up against the budget. So, again, better maintenance supplies. We do have higher employee costs as we have run at a slightly higher headcount level than we budgeted. So on the operating income side, lower than budget by 7%, mostly unfavorable volume effect due to the revenue reduction, the budget, although that's partially offset by better spending. Operating income is up by 34% on against last year on the city side. Again, favorable volume effect, lower spending levels. So as you look at operating income to sales, we actually finished the month at 36. Budget was 36, so it left us right on at least in the rate of profitability, and better than last year, because last year was 30.3. Non-operating revenues and expenses, lower than budget because we had lower tapping and connection fees in both cases. So where we are with earnings is lower than budget by 8%. Again, the unfavorable volume effect, and I'm kind of trying to capture everything right now. So you got a lower volume effect, lower spending levels to offset some of that, lower tapping and connection fees, and then compared to last year, we're up by 27% on higher volume and lower spending as well. So as you get into interest expense, we are $1.3 million versus a budget of $1 million, and basically that's driven by, there's some capitalized interest that needs to come out of it that really had not been booked. We only really book that once a quarter.
What is that? Give us an example.
Capitalized interest was the amount, in fact, it was $1.3 million still on the books related to interest on capital spending that existed at the beginning of the session here.
So it goes way back.
Well, it goes back to 2013, and it only comes off, it'll come off over a 3-year period, so we've got some.
So if you book that adjustment, what's your guesstimate?
Pardon?
If you book that adjustment,
For just January, you're
Yeah.
talking about maybe $200,000, that's all.
so it brings you back toward the budget.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so on the net income side, that 416 loss is lower than budget on lower volume, along with interest expense, and then lower than last year on higher interest expense as well. That's the city side.
Any questions? Where's the result?
No, I left this as a placeholder. We're not going to talk about this. We just talked about the same numbers, but I left this in there because the plan will be to do the month and then year to date as well, so that we can keep rolling on year to date. So we'll head into the suburban division. On the operating revenue side, we are up by 5% the budget. We did have higher residential revenues, higher West LWLI water revenues, Western Lehigh Interceptor Group, higher, and compared to last year, we were higher by just about 1%, and that's Western Lehigh wastewater revenues as well. So, operating expenses up a little bit, up the budget by 2%, mostly driven by volume. We did have higher costs for outside services. Last year, we hired by 7%, and that's again slightly higher volume effect and higher costs on outside services. So on the income side, we did better. We lost -5 against the budget of -49, and so we're better by the budget by 9% with that favorable volume, with the unfavorable outside services spending. So as we look at operating income loss and sales, you're at -2% versus a budget of -2.3. So we're at a better rate than the budget, but we're not as good as last year because of the higher spending. Non-operating revenues very similar to the city side. We just had lower tapping and connection fees. So as you get into earnings before interest, we're up by 26. So we have 98 versus 78 versus 253. Again, volume is the primary driver. And as you get into interest income, no major changes. Interest expense, they were a little bit lower than budget, lower tapping fees.
Why would you have lower interest expense if you have lower tapping fees?
I got screwed up on that, because the capping fees wouldn't have anything.
No,
to do
they
with
wouldn't.
interest expense. So, my typing fingers wouldn't do it. The interest expense is lower on the suburban side, because we've reduced some of the principal, and we just don't have it. So that's gonna come down on a yearly basis. I have something in it, over typing. Okay. Actually, so, on a debt service basis, 2.09 versus 1.89, 2.66, we're up the budget, not as good to last year.
Okay, any questions? It's good analysis.
So we just need to change the format from what I'm hearing, and make it a little bit bigger and more pleasant for the eyes. Okay.
All right.
Better city numbers.
What's that?
Better city numbers, too.
Working on it.
Yeah, I've got work on that.
Okay, get bigger.
Make those typos count.
For imagination.
All right, are we going to go through approval of financial report? Okay. All right.
Just the audit.
Acceptance.
The audit statements will do an acceptance.
Okay. All right, so we'll move, any other questions on financial administration? There were several sheets of paper, white sheets that deal with finance administration. Any questions on those? I guess we're going to get into project updates later on.
Yeah.
Anybody have questions later? Okay. So let's move into water. Atown Division Water System Master Plan, blue sheets, and presentation by.
Good evening. One of the requirements that we have with the lease with the city is to produce what they call a comprehensive plan for both the water and wastewater systems. This comprehensive plan would then be updated every 5 years throughout the lifetime of the lease. And the one I'm going to be introducing today is just the water side. We're going to do the wastewater project in a couple of years, but we're going to do water side now, and this will serve as a baseline for the entire 50-year lease. The master plan is going to include the water plant itself, all of our storage tanks and reservoirs, the pressure booster stations, and both surface water intakes. When the RFP was created for this job, We had looked at several different areas for inclusion of their work. We're going to have a full-scale condition assessment of all of our facilities. We're going to do process audits and optimization in an attempt to save some money on what we're currently doing. We're going to create both short-term and long-term capital plans. And we're going to have the engineers look at facilities in terms of safety, security, and how they compare with current building codes. One of the things I made very, very clear to the respondents when they were in for their site visits, they were supposed to look at all the facilities and equipment and determine if each of them could be realistically expected to last for the duration of the lease. So I said, look at them now. You have 47 years to go. You know, if it's only going to last for 30 or 40, in your opinion, I'd like to get it on the books now rather than it be a surprise in 10 or 15 years, so everybody, including the city, knows about it. When the RFP was finalized, we sent to 4 different firms. I really wanted to go with major firms that had huge amounts of resources. As you can see, I went with 4 global firms: Arcadis, CH2M, Hazen and Sawyer, and AECOM. Each of them were extremely well-versed in doing such work. Their proposals were excellent. There was just a little bit of changes in each one, but as you can see, the pricing is essentially similar too. We really did root through all of them and made sure that everything came into what we were looking for as far as how this job was going to go. One thing that really we focused on with this project too was how we're trying to mold this job into the condition assessment work that's going on with the company right now that Chuck's going to be heading up. We're looking at all of our facilities as far as expected lifetime and risk of failure and stuff like that. And when you think of it from that concept, we have a lot of water system infrastructure that's, to say the least, very old. To give a few examples, we have the Sean Spring transmission main that's from 1903. The water plant itself was built in 1928 with an upgrade in 1953. Eastside Reservoir and South Mountain Reservoir were built in 1937, and most of our booster stations were built in either the 1950s or the 1960s. So by the time the lease is over, just about everything we have will be over 100 years old. Some of it's starting to show. Most of it looks in excellent shape, and will continue to stay that way, but we want verification of that. So part of their condition assessments for this job is going to look at a number of different areas. It's going to be look at structural, HVAC, electrical, security, and SCADA and instrumentation control. Just as a little aside here, probably 2 of the biggest concerns we have with the water system were both built in 1953. The filters at the water plant, we did our bill recon work a couple months ago. We're actually starting to see some cracks in the clay undertiles, which are a big cause for concern. And the other one is the water plant intake in the Little Lehigh that's beyond the water plant, was built in 1953. We're grandfathered in for that intake right now, but it's honestly, it's using design standards from 60 years ago, and it's in really good need of a facelift. So we're going to hone in on a lot of different areas, but those are the 2 that right now come to the forefront. So what we're looking for today is approval on our capital project authorization for an award to Arcadis. As you can see, they came out with the low cost, actually by quite a bit, $41,000. We've been using them for a number of jobs over the past few years, and I can fully tell you that we're going to be getting excellent personnel for this job. The guy that's coming in for the process audit has a PhD. I was extremely impressed with what he had to say, so I'm very, very confident how this job's going to come out. So again, I'm looking for a capital project authorization in the amount of $295,000. And secondly, I'm requesting a professional services authorization for Arcadis in the amount of $245,000.
Want them separate?
No, it's okay. I mean, we can do it together.
I'll make that motion. That we approve the capital project authorization and professional services authorization.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Are there questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's a quick one. Are these open bids? These are bid, are they? Is it a public?
Their proposals,
Yes.
So they're not like publicized that I would get all kinds of different responses.
No,
I have to.
when you open the bids,
Mhm.
is it in a public forum?
Oh, no,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
It doesn't, professional services don't need to be.
I didn't know that.
I didn't.
Do the hour variations bother you at all?
Well, it did at first. I think what it comes down to is Arcadis has been doing the lease indenture report the last couple of years. They also did a lot of our due diligence work for the lease. So they probably know the facilities better than anybody else as far as the other consultants go. Their hours look a little odd. They're high in hours, but quite a few of their hours are junior staff that are going to work through a lot of the paperwork and things like that. So that's the difference between them and CH2M. I mean, there's 200 extra hours. CH2M has those 200 extra hours of upper staff at probably twice the rate. So that's where the difference in fees come.
Thank you.
Just a clarification question, John. Is the scope of this appears to be maintenance and upgrades and future capital investment?
Yeah.
It doesn't have growth in demand in it, or does it?
Well, interesting you asked that. We did talk to the consultants too when they were in. The current design of the water plant is for 30 million gallons per day. We're only filtering about 10.
No.
So we would like to have the plant upgraded to a point where we can actually meet the design standards, and that's where the intakes and the filters come in.
Okay.
So, yes, you're correct on that.
I imagine when you're looking at the intake structure, and any modification to that, that's a substantial permit change requirements for that compared to the old days.
We estimated, and Chuck can probably answer that better, we probably are going to look at 4 or 5 years at least, if we started right now, until we got the design, the permitting, everything else done. There's a huge lead time on that one. You're 100% right.
Yes.
Yeah, just had a question as far as, not this bid, but was there anything like this done before we even went to, like, do the lease?
With the city?
Yeah.
The city never did a master plan per se.
Did
So no, this-
anybody
no.
look into that before to have, like, there's nothing to go on at all yet? This will be it?
Exactly. So this is kind of like the key report to give us the baseline for future updates.
Okay.
Because the city, like you're asking, the city did not do a master plan before.
Okay, and then this is the Allentown's plant and everything for water and whatever, which
Right.
everybody's responsible with now. Is Allentown tied into this anyway to help pay for any of this stuff?
If any of the projects would turn out to be over $1 million, they were termed as major capital, and we got approval from the city to do it, then yes.
Okay, there's a percentage they chip in or anything
Uh,
over $1 million or?
I think that depends on what you're asking. The city customer would help pay for major capital improvements through the rates for those projects that are over $1 million. But the city as an organization does not participate in this cost.
Okay, so it's all the ratepayer that would have to be responsible for this.
Right.
There was nothing drawn up in the lease agreement that, you know, we need to base something on a baseline now, and anything above that, we're going by good faith that, you know, we know what we're talking about, basically. And you might have to chip in as a city to make up for, because it's a lease, they are gonna get it back at the end
Right.
with repairs done, and then what happens then? Do they give us anything back for all the work that the ratepayers pay for?
That's a great question, and actually, in the out years, further on down the line, for projects that will have a useful life that span across the end of the lease, the 50 years, there's a fund or an account that we need to create to help the city pay for those costs that will go over the edge of the lease.
To help the city pay for them, or
Yeah.
having the city help us pay for them?
Having us help the city pay for those costs that go out over the edge of the lease.
Okay,
That's way further on down the line than what we're contemplating here, but those projects that might be outlined in the master plan might help us get our hands around what those future projects might be.
I'm reading under the first page of the sheets that the master plan is a requirement of the lease, and it has to be updated every 5 years throughout the lifetime of, so it is a requirement of the lease to do this.
But that sounds like it was Allentown driven almost
Yes.
versus LCA driven.
And we
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Under the financials on page 2, the subtitle financials, it says the project will be funded by LCA. That would be LCA Allentown Division, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so try and make sure that that is clarified in all any of these, so our LCA suburban customers don't think that they're paying for it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, motion made and seconded. Any other further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, thank you. Moving on to Allentown Division Water Main Replacement Program, cycles 4 to 6, the yellow copies, and that is me, Frank.
Just want to introduce Jason Peters, he's over there. He's our project manager for all the main replacements in the entire organization. Just wanted to meet him and understand these main replacements are rather complex and difficult within the city. The memorandum, what I'd like to do is I'd like to renew the Gannett Plumbing contract for another project period. We define a project period as a 3-year cycle. The current project period that covers 2014 through 2016 will end with the construction of the mains constructed in 2016, which is currently out to bid. We'll be bringing those back to the board probably in April. What we're looking for is to secure design services from Gannett Fleming for cycles, the second project for cycles, the years 2017 through 2019, 3-year period. Gannett Fleming was selected previously through a competitive process where they were, not this time, but the previous project, which they were approximately 25% less in cost from the closest competitor at that time, which was CDM. We have established an excellent relationship with Gannett Fleming, with the city of Allentown, the compliance department, and all the other departments in Allentown that allow us to bid these projects as one contract. We always meet schedule, we always make budget, and everything works fine. So on that pretense, I'm asking to renew the Gannett Fleming contract for another 3 years and design authorization for staff and other things, which is on your capital project authorization.
Okay.
Any questions?
There was before we get into a motion, there's a section in here on page 2 underneath the first box that says the following services are not included. And I didn't see, I saw on the project capital authorization a miscellaneous fund of $150,000.
Yes.
But was that the possibility of those things happening, or
Yes.
is that for something else?
Yeah, it's for the possibility of those happening. In the first 3 cycles, it was not necessary to do them. In some areas of the city, when you get into the older areas towards the center of town, there's a lot of things that are buried under the road that they might not have plans for. So in those cases, we might have to do some geotech work, soft days, or the most expensive is ground penetrating radar, which actually walk along the area and you can see everything. We did not use anything for that last cycle. It's just a precautionary measure because things can get expensive, you have to do that work.
Okay, thank you. Was Gannett Fleming used by the city to do this work prior to?
The city used to do it in-house. They used to do it with their own engineering department, but they would put out one street at a time in, a little bit at a time. We're gaining a lot of efficiencies by doing it in one swoop. Actually, the next contract is currently out for bid. We're bidding both the suburban and the Allentown main replacements in one bid package as 2 contracts. So we'll have over 7 miles of main that we will be asking the board to award in late, the last board meeting in March or first board meeting in April. So we should get a lot of economies that way.
I don't need a motion. Somebody speak up.
Second.
So, assume that the motion made is for capital project authorization of 961, 455, which includes professional service authorization of 601,455. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to anything further in water. Otherwise, we'll move into wastewater. Wastewater Low Hill Township Sewer System Acquisition, green sheets.
The board took action last year to acquire the Low Hill Township sewer system, and we were all ready to close on it when we discovered that the Low Hill sewage runs through Upper McConchy Township, and we were just assuming that it would be, the agreement would be assigned to us, but Upper McConchy made the position that it wasn't assignable, and they wanted to negotiate an agreement. It just took us a while to do that, and they lost their, I don't know the story why, but the Lower McConchy Township Authority manager left in the midst of it. So we finally have an agreement. It's really very similar to the agreement that we have, more really with Weisenberg Township already. And with the Weisenberg Township system, when we acquired it, the Weisenberg Upper McConchy agreement was assigned to us, and this is very similar to that. It, primarily provides the types of things we would expect, that would expect to go sewage, the sewage goes to a certain pump station and some interceptors. If they need to be upgraded, we pay in proportion to our flow. The Low Hill pays in proportion to the flow. There's a rate in here for transportation fees and so forth. Those are the existing rates that we pay not only in Low Hill, or that are paid in Low Hill, but it's also the rates that we pay in Weisenberg and seven and eight, yeah, that's the per gallon sewage fee. So I would recommend the board approve this. We are looking at this gets approved by our board and Upper McConchy's board. And their solicitor told me he thought they already approved it, and I asked for confirmation twice and didn't get that answer back, so I'm not sure if we have yet or not, but they're in agreement with it. And then we'll try to have closing on the Low Hill system probably in June, so it's the end of the billing quarter.
Is there anything unusual about this?
No, not
Pretty
at
much
all.
business as usual?
Yep, it's very typical.
For your background, the customers, 43 customers that are impacted here, and they're already our water customers. So it's pretty straightforward.
I guess what I raised a flag on page 2, number 4. It's the I&I issue, second issue for us. It appears that any exceeding engineering standards for allowable infiltration inflow will be at our expense.
Within the Low Hill system.
Within the Low Hill system as it goes through the Upper McConchy system. Is that, that's kind of unusual, I find it unusual, because none of the other signatories have that kind of.
Well, no, I think what it's saying is it's any, that if infiltration in the Low Hill system exceeds these standards, then it's the responsibility of the Low Hill system. And actually, that is the language that's in the Weisenberg agreement, and it's pretty standard. Actually, I added to this. This is a little bit better because they didn't have anything in it about a standard. It was just saying we'll take care of any I&I, and I thought there needed to be something to some boundary around. Otherwise, Upper McConchy would just say, well, you have X amount of I&I, we can take it out, and anything unreasonable to do that.
Yeah, I read this as it's with the authority repairing or eliminating at its own expense, referring to us, not the local.
Well, yeah, because we own the system.
So it comes out of our pocket then.
Yeah. Not local. Well, the local won't have its own rate, it'll be part of our.
LCA. So it will be
Yes.
LCA's expense, not the proposed expense.
Yeah, it will not be the township's expense, we are, but that's also the case in Weisenberg too.
Right.
Okay.
Or up in Milford.
Yeah, for Milford, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Motion made.
Second.
Normal. Normal second. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved. All right. Let's see, monthly project updates.
Yes.
First meeting of the month, that's this now.
Yep, and that's the white packet that you have, and this should look pretty familiar to all of you except Kevin. This is the former board note packet that we had always given to you, but we just kind of changed the title. And the other thing that we did was for any action or discussion items, we listed the date that we plan for you to see that. So the ones that say March 14th, we've done today, and then the ones that say March 28th will be the ones that will come up on your next agenda. And there's quite a few of them under water and one under wastewater. So,
And we try to also note if nothing's changed since last month, so that we don't have to reread the same words
They
over
say
and over.
no change.
No change.
Yep. And so, really, we don't have any comments about this other than if you all have questions.
Anybody on the board? Yes.
Yeah, under the CDs,
Yes.
who makes that decision to purchase and how?
I do.
And how do you do that?
Basically, we are taking a number of already existing CDs that are turning over or maturing and just rolling them over into additional CDs. And I usually get options on which is the better interest rate and the fees are. So we usually pick the best yield.
Who do you work with?
Actually working with Kevin Perkins and Chris Gibbons. Mostly Kevin on the investment side. So, and he's been associated, to my knowledge, with this organization for at least 5 years, to my knowledge. So, and I know that Laurel worked with him as well on all of
Is this work spread around, or do you work?
these. It is spread around. I mean, we just had another batch of rollovers. We're trying to keep it so that it's not everything occurring at one time. Then we've got everything kind of going on a quarterly basis with different maturities.
Are these bought directly from Banco Popular North America? Or
That is correct.
This is direct purchase, there's no intermediary.
No. I gotta stand corrected. In this particular case, there was JP Morgan, so.
How often does that happen? Do you have an intermediary?
I'd say more than half of what we're doing has got an intermediary.
And you spread that around between Morgan and other housing?
There's, I think we're using at least 3 different institutions.
And what is the fee? What's the broker fee on that?
Most of them are dependent on what the interest rates are. So if I'm getting 1.5%, I'm usually getting $750 a transaction or something like that.
Fixed price.
Yeah, and as the rates are going down, they're dropping the rates. So, you know, to be honest with you, actually, we look at, I mean, when they quote stuff to me, I don't look at rates, I look at yields after fees, so.
But didn't we used to do this through some state agency?
I don't know about the state.
Or like police staff, the.
There was, that used to be something, I don't know if I know what we did with Liggett.
I'm not sure that I could answer that. I mean, I'm basically picked up with the institutions and process that.
Well, excuse me, we used to sit here and argue or fuss about 0.1%, you know, these crazy numbers, and the response we got was that these were acquired through some state thing that I thought was similar to the purchasing agreements that we have in the state where we can buy stuff through that. I'm wrong?
We were doing them both through either Pliget or Police staff,
Yeah.
but I don't know what those stand for. PLSDAF. We used to see long sheets of them down there, but I don't.
But we would see maybe 10 investments at one time instead of one, like you got here.
Yeah, this one just happened to be one that kind of rolled over this time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's quite a few of them out there coming up.
And the sources were from all over the country. I mean, we used to be banks in Utah and all this kind of stuff. And we'd ask about it and then say, well,
Shop around.
Yeah, we're trying to get, I'm working with Kevin on getting better rates than we're getting. We were in the neighborhood of 5%. We're starting to talk about CDs that are in the neighborhood of 1.25. Obviously, that changes as the duration changes. And I'm trying to keep the cycle to within 12, 15 months and try to stagger it all so that just in case we ever need some cash, I don't have to wait for it all to happen, so.
Any other questions on the projects that were listed under water or under sewer? Okay. Move on to any staff comments. You said that there was at least one lead sampling protocol that we had talked about before.
Yes, we did skip that last time around. The meeting went a little bit long last time, but we do have a little presentation on our lead sampling protocol as promised. And I'd also introduced Donna Wingle, who's our quality advisor, safety and audit advisor. And between John Parsons, Pat Landis, and Donna, hopefully we can answer all your questions.
So I'm going to be the one to go through the presentation. That Liesl said, Donna, who's been with us for over 25 years, is our quality manager and safe drinking water advisor. And she knows more probably in this whole organization about the Safe Drinking Water Act. So feel free to make any corrections to what I say, Donna. Okay. We're really presenting this to you just because this, the lead has been a big topic in the newspapers and so forth regarding Flint, and then also recently with the city of Allentown. So we just wanted to give you an overview so you had a better understanding of what the lead and copper rule is and how it relates to LCA. So what is the purpose of the lead and copper rule? Well, it's to protect public health by minimizing lead and copper levels in drinking water. It was first established in 1992. It is a federal requirement. It will trigger treatment technique requirements when the lead and copper results exceed the action levels. We'll get into action levels a little bit later. And the primary treatment technique is to reduce water fluoridity. So what are the action levels? They're the concentration at the consumer's tap that are required to trigger treatment or other action. So the action levels, they are not maximum contaminant levels, so if we exceed them, it's not actually a violation. The action level for copper is 1.3 parts per million, and for lead it is 0.015 parts per million.
That's not exactly right.
We have a clarification from
I'm sorry, you changed what I had here. It isn't the concentration at a tap per se. It would be at the 90th percentile. That would be the actual.
Right, I have that written down.
Okay.
We'll see that. So I changed it to 10% instead of 98%. Here it is. If 10% of all the sample results exceed the action level, then action must be taken. So that's when it's triggered. And all of the LCA's water systems, including the city's system, are below the action levels. So why is corrosion control effective? Corrosive water can dissolve the metals that are in the pipe. Treatment to reduce the corrosive water then minimizes the dissolving of the metals from the pipe. Why are samples taken during the summer months? Basically because EPA tells us that's when we have to. The regulations dictate monitoring frequencies and times. Standard monitoring is every 6 months. Reduced monitoring is every 3 years, and it must be completed between June and September.
If you have to take samples every 6 months during the summer, how do you do that?
Well, it would be every 6 months, so it actually, some of them would not be in the summer.
During the summer, right?
Right.
Well, it's defined as January to June.
That's the summer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, that would be the first 6 months
6 months.
period, and then the next 6 month period would also be
Okay.
the 6
Why do you only sample every 3 years? Well, all of the LCA samples have achieved the reduced monitoring, and that has occurred because we are consistently below the action levels for both lead and copper. So to maintain the compliance with the lead and copper rule, in addition to the 3-year monitoring for the lead and copper, the Allentown system also has to take samples for water quality parameters such as pH and alkalinity, and that must be done twice per week.
No, every other.
Every other week. How were the sampling sites originally selected? The lead and copper rule defines how water systems must select sample sites. Initially, we would send out a material survey to each one of the homes to determine what kind of plumbing that they used in their home. Then tiered designations are assigned and a sample pool is created of the worst case scenario sites. And residential buildings are preferred over commercial.
Question.
Yes.
Right behind you, Steve. How do people know what kind of plumbing system they have?
Sometimes you go to the permits that were issued when the houses were, the zoning requirements that were done at the time. How else?
And for our central division, for example, first we looked at the ages of the houses and then did a material survey. We sent out letters to some of the homes that were in the categories we thought were tier 1 sites. And then they would respond, answering various questions about plumbing. And then we would do on-site inspections.
If these are rental buildings, do you send it to the owner or to the tenants?
It would go to the owner.
And if they refuse?
They're allowed to refuse.
They are allowed.
We've not been finding these.
Yeah, question back there.
Yeah.
At the last meeting that we were to, we were talking about this, and it was said that a lot of the people that were picked were employees, just
That's
because it
true.
made it easier or something
For
like that?
Allentown, yes, that's true.
Just for Allentown?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For the rest of the,
They're
then you do those
random. I don't
testings?
think we use anybody other than that works here. I don't think we use any homes.
Okay, is that going to be standard in Allentown even now? LCA
Well,
kinda took over.
we try to use the same homes as long as there aren't plumbing changes that prohibit that. So whoever is still on the list and still has lead service lines, because we're sampling lead service lines.
Okay, only.
So that's worst case scenario, regardless of who owns the home.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
okay.
Are all lead service lines equal? In other words, if you are testing the same location again and again and again, how do you know that that's an accurate representation of the, I'm going to guess, hundreds or thousands of homes in Allentown that have lead piping coming in the door?
The main goal of the lead and copper rule is determine whether or not the water is corrosive. And if you have high lead levels after the water's been sitting in the pipe, that's a real good indication that the water is indeed corrosive. And if you have a good number of those, then that's time to, take some action. And that isn't the case with our water.
But I think to answer your question, there's copper pipe with lead solder.
Right.
If you're just using a
That's
lead
true.
pipe,
Right.
a lead pipe is a lead pipe.
Yeah, lead pipe is one.
And if you have the same water source with the same corrosivity, it should be pretty much equal no matter what home you're in.
So all lead pipes are equal.
I would,
We know that. Is it pop, again, I don't know what I'm talking about, so let's. I've never thought it before.
Well, and then the other thing is it's a minimum of 6 hours.
No, I understand that. I'm
It
not
gets longer
criticizing,
than
believe me.
6.
I'm just wondering
Yeah.
whether all the lead pipes in Allentown are built, are the same standard
Of lead.
of lead.
Well,
whether, the,
Oh, it-
whether a lead pipe is 100% lead or it's 80% lead with
Yeah,
some
maybe
filler or
I'll
something.
without digging them up and testing them.
And so basically, we're testing the system's corrosivity, its pH
Yes.
basically, and whether or not the water going through our pipes to the residential properties is going to be corrosive. And if it is, then it shows up as exceedances in lead or high levels of lead.
It will leach
As long as
somewhere.
we are keeping our system at the right pH, we will not see those kinds of those issues. Whether it's a lead pipe or a lead solder installation, it all comes down to the corrosivity of the water. Correct?
Which is really what happened in Flint.
Flint, right?
So they didn't test for lead in Flint. They tested for,
No, they tested for lead. They just switched their water supply and they went to a more corrosive water and it leached.
okay, we'll move on, I don't want to. But my point is that if you're testing for lead and you're not getting a really wide sample because you go back to the same locations again and again, is it theoretically possible there's higher lead levels in other areas? That's all.
EPA actually, I think I'm correct in saying this, that they want you to go back
Yeah.
to repeat places because they have the baseline, and then if you're becoming more or less corrosive, they can tell that from going to the same sites. But in the next slide, will show the 3 tiers. Tier 1 being the actual worst case. That's where it's a single-family structure with lead pipes, lead service lines, or copper pipes with lead solder installed after 1982, but before 1991. Tier 2 is the same as Tier 1, but for buildings and multiple family residences. And Tier 3 is constructed as a single-family residence, currently used as either a residence or a business containing copper pipes with lead solder that was installed before 1983. So in all of our systems, we are able to sample Tier 1 sites. So it's the worst case scenario.
Why is tier 1 worst case scenario? It's after 82. Why aren't the older ones worse? What makes tier 1? Why don't the old systems also have, I think the old systems, you have more lead piping and
The date, Scott, doesn't refer to the lead services. That 1982 is just the copper pipes with the solder. The lead service line regardless.
Oh, okay, okay. So it's just that.
So I believe it's in the city systems, they're all Tier 1 sites, and then in the other systems, we don't have lead service lines in some of our systems, so we use the worst case scenario.
Yeah, and we have some newer systems that they don't, no tiers are applicable, so. We have a variety of different systems with different.
John, I'll get to you. Any other board questions?
Yes.
John?
What's the cost of doing a lead sample for a home, let's say?
Well, we have really great prices from our contract lab. I think
$4.
it's $8 or $9. Oh, for $4, yeah.
Yeah, $4 per metal.
But you have to do them together, so it's 8 or 9. Pretty inexpensive.
That's just the lab cost, though, it doesn't.
That is
include
just the lab cost.
the
That's
collection
not-
and
That's not our
managing the data.
time, right?
How many total samples do you take at a time?
We do 50 in Allentown, and the rest of the systems are 95.
It says before 1991. In other words, I guess, after 1991, there was no more lead piping put in? That's the idea.
Lead
Lead solder.
solder. Lead solder.
Lead solder was
I know lead
added.
pipe. When did they discontinue lead piping?
78.
70s or 60s, right?
Tier 1 sites, all lead and copper samples from the Allentown and Central Division are collected from Tier 1 sites. Allentown's Tier 1 sites have lead service lines, and the Central Division's Tier 1 sites have copper pipe with lead solder that were installed after 1982. There are no lead service lines in the Central Division. Power sampling sites selected for each 3-year cycle. We went over this a little bit, but previous sample sites from the sample pool are contacted for updates to see if there's been any major changes in the home. Perhaps they would have changed their piping. So we want to determine if the sample site is still viable. We obtain the homeowner's acceptance, and if necessary, we replace the previously used site with a site from the sample pool that we have. Power samples taken. Customers actually must collect the samples. We provide them with sampling instructions. The instructions are for PA DEP guidance documents. We provide them with a bottle and show them how much water we need in each sample. We will include pictures with the instructions this year, since 2016 is our 3-year cycle. And then the water system goes to the homes and pick up the samples.
Just picking up on Ted's comment before, if we're dealing with the owner of the rental property, not the renter itself, the onus is on, well, the incentive is to not find any problems with their lead piping. So the person that's actually consuming the water is not going to be actually getting the results of the sample. It's the owner who might have to
Gets
make
the results?
modifications.
Well, who's
I
actually
believe
taking
the
the
law-
sample? Who's taking, yeah, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, who's actually taking the sample and turning it?
Yeah, is
It's
it-
going to be the residents going to take the sample.
Oh, the residents that are actually living in the rental property is taking the sample. Okay. And they get the results. Or they get-
Oh, I believe we have to send the results to the
The
occupant.
owner shares it with them, but, yeah.
So we send it to both the owner and the tenant?
I only have one place where it's a rental, and they have shared it. I didn't send it to the tenant, though.
And that's for the suburban
Yeah,
division.
we haven't done the
But
city.
I don't know about the city.
We've never had any rentals for lead and copper in the city that I've ever
Yeah,
known.
this hadn't been a rental, it was someone that had lived there, and during the last cycle, they found out that it wasn't even a rental now, so we went.
This is just, shows an example of our sample instructions, just highlighting, it must be the first draw, which is the minimum of 6 hours the water has to sit in the pipes. You also have to use the cold water tap and require 1 liter sample. So just an example for you. Are results shared with program participants? Yes, since 1992, the LCA customers participating in the lead and copper program have received test results. In 2012, it actually became a requirement to provide results with specified health effect language. So part of this rule is actually to educate homeowners on, lead and copper and what they can do to help it. Just some information, in 2016 is a monitoring year for lead and copper in all LCA systems. Allentown Division is on reduced monitoring, and the other LCA systems as well, meaning that the levels of lead and copper are consistently below the action levels. Does everybody have an understanding now? Any questions?
Yeah, are you pretty confident that the people taking the samples are actually following the protocols and they're taking it like, first thing in the morning, and they're not like, oh yeah, we already took our showers and cooked, oh yeah, you gotta grab a sample today, and you just take a sample.
We have it happen where people, somebody got up, well, sorry, down in the middle of the night, they got up and they used the water, so we just reschedule. And I've been using the same locations for the most part for as long as we've been doing this, so I'm pretty familiar with these people, they know what to do, and I feel pretty confident about it.
All
And the city, because they're employees, I would think that they're very well educated on.
They got firsthand training about how to take their samples, so
Yeah.
it was really detailed.
Okay.
And I would think most people want to know the worst case, so they're going to try and take the sample correctly.
And overall, our pH levels are sort of up. We don't have really the city's water, do we?
No.
Just an
Well,
information.
a couple of systems we do, but we're doing pH adjustment.
Just for information, I imagine since when people have been inquiring what's going on in the water supply, what kind of inputs are we getting from the public on that?
I haven't gotten any questions. Thank you.
Really?
I can respond a little bit to that from the customer service end of things, that we did get a little bit of a flurry of customer contact right when the story first broke about the Allentown lead levels, but the explanations that we've been giving regarding the quality of the water in our protocols have been, really have not produced any inquiries since then. We also do have some information that we can make available about if people have lead service lines or not. We have some of that information available for Allentown. So sometimes we get inquiries about that. Do I have a lead service line or not? And people that I can tell them that. But it's been extremely minimal.
So no tidal wave in the back of that.
We did get a public records officer too. We did get a public record request from a British newspaper that was trying to do research on, it was their New York office, but they, and it was very, and as soon as it was handed on to me, I said to Lisa, I think this is being sent all over the country, and, and I think that was the case, because we provided some information, but the city has asked us with the concession that anytime there's a public record request dealing with the system when the city owned it, that it should go through the city. So since the copper and lead testing was never done by us, but by the city, we referred the reporter back to the city and then provided a little bit of information, and I've heard nothing else since, so.
The bigger kind of spotlight has been from the media. We've received quite a bit of media inquiries on it, WFMC, but the customer, the actual public interest in it has been pretty low.
And there was a pretty big article regarding the city of Allentown and the children in the city and the lead levels that are actually pretty high. And it pretty quickly became apparent that it's not from the water, but it's from the lead can. So that's been more of the focus, I think.
So here's the question that the board needs to ask you. In light of the Flint issue and the significance of the concern, are we doing enough to ensure that our system is safe and will continue to be safe with regard to the lead and copper issues that are out there? Or are we doing enough? Do we need to do more?
I believe we're following federal guidelines that scientifically have.
That's not the question. I know we're doing the right thing by law, but should we be doing more to give us the confidence that we need to have to make sure that we don't run into some kind of problem that we've kind of just assumed that everything's okay?
I think with the amount of sampling that we've done, or we've gone through 11 different cycles now, we've had very few hits that has even reached the action level. And I think we've done a variety of systems. We know what the water corrosivity is. I think we're doing enough.
I think my only challenging question would be, do we test in an atmosphere that requires us to examine all sources of water? You talk about the city of Allentown and all these people, is all the water from the same source? I mean, isn't that the question? The question is, how good or bad is the water?
Well, we have different sources in different systems.
I know
Each
that,
one of
but-
those are tested.
Do we test do we test places that include all water sources?
I believe that answer is
With this
Conference. Yes.
Remember, at the city, all the sources are mixed. We almost never use the Lehigh River. That's the one that has the concern for us. The alkalinity is low and the pH is low. So the other three sources are the majority, 99% of the time. And that's what our samples are based on. So, and answering a number of questions, and Kevin, I was going to point this out to you because hopefully you're going to come to this tour before long. If the numbers ever got to the point of not looking good, the water plant was forced 20 years ago by DEP to put in a zinc orthophosphate system. It's already in place. We don't have the chemical in the plant, but the tank is there, the feeding system, the monitoring, all that's there. So it wouldn't be a matter of we have to go out and get an engineer and design it, install it. It is get a delivery and we're good to go. I was hired in '95 as a lab manager, so I did 3 or 4 rounds of those tests myself. Well, like they both said, we had 1 or 2 out of our 100. And we weren't on reduced monitoring, and we were on full 100 samples monitoring. And we had maybe 2 or 3 out of the 100 that were over the action level. And those houses, residences got notified of what their results were. And ultimately it was up to them. If there was issues with their piping in their house, it was up to them because it was private property. But are we doing everything that we could be doing? I mean, I would have to agree. I mean, we're doing everything that is required of us, and there's been no history to show any concern. Honestly, I don't see, based on our numbers, I just don't see a problem.
I would assume that those 2 or 3 that you had out of that 100 would have been because of specific lines just going into those 2 or 3 homes, not the transmission lines from the
What my bet would be, they were gone for a day or 2 and that water sat idle for a day or 2.
or longer.
Good question again from John.
There's a lot of people in the city that don't use a lot of water either. You know, it's really, when you talk about the cities like Flint and whatever, center city people, unfortunately, from what we've seen, that they just don't use a lot. So I mean, the pipes aren't flushed as much as other homes would be.
There's a question behind you.
Were those homes, do you know, copper, lead, or just lead?
Both. We did lead and copper testing, and honestly, I know the lead better, but I think we hit the action limit on copper even less than we did on lead.
But I mean, were those houses lead, copper, like updated or more newer plumbing versus pure lead feed?
The only way, because all of our sites were based on lead services, that was the only way that they got off the list, was that if their service got replaced. So if they did plumbing changes in their house, they still would have been a tier 1 site because they had service. So it really...
Do you know if they changed it all from one to the other and they all of a sudden became, or did they always were high?
I'm trying to think of the paperwork we had. We might have had it updated, but like I said, it still wouldn't have taken them off the tier 1 list because of the lead service. That's what qualified them in the first place, was the fact that they had a lead service from the distribution pipe to their curb stop.
The city service.
Just be interesting to know if
City
it
service,
was
yeah.
Public service.
On the
it
other
was
side.
always high, or if
Curb stop.
they did something inside, like updated their plumbing indoors, and all
No.
of a sudden it changed it.
So I think he might be asking too, was it repeat? Anytime that you had a higher level, was it a repeat customer of the same property?
I'd have to look just to make sure about specific sites, but honestly, we didn't do a lot of different sites because we didn't have to. We had the same list that worked for us. The original 100 that we did in the 90s became the list of 50 that were, I mean, again, all lead service lines, so that's what made them tier 1s.
So if, one particular resident, one address was over the action level, was it over the 3 years prior or 3 years later? Was it a repeat high result?
Honestly, right now, I couldn't answer that.
Ted?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, if you get a hit, do we go back and test it? Or we just tell them, hey, you got a problem, see ya? Or do we go back and say, we're coming back in a year and retest? What is our obligation, stop?
We could tell them, and we have told them what they could do. I mean, if they've got internal piping, that could be changed.
But that's where we stop. We educate them and then they're gone.
Yeah, because really, beyond the curb stop, it's
No, I
it's not our...
understand that.
One other thing too, I just wanted to maybe point out or possibly ask about the question of are we doing enough? I think it is also important to note that the plant has online monitoring for pH and alkalinity. So we
Right.
always know the quality of water that's going out to the system. And that's really the indicator of the.
So that's daily, that's hourly?
Constantly.
Constantly,
It's
so.
24/7.
We're raising an alarm if you got out of limits.
And there are other water quality parameters that we mentioned.
Yeah.
We do 10 of those every other week, and those are tested for pH and alkalinity as well as
Okay. All
bacteria.
right. It's our responsibility to make sure we're doing enough, to make sure that we're not having a problem.
And off the top of my head, I think the pH limits are.
They're really tight.
Is it 6.8 leaving the plant and 7.2 in the system? And the alkalinity is 55 milligrams per liter, which is a fraction of what we put out. So, I mean, we don't even approach the numbers, much less away from them.
All right, thank you. Any other staff comments? Moving on to solicitor comments.
I have nothing additional.
Other comments? I know that Ted and Scott attended one of the board conferences. You want to say anything about that?
Yeah, real quick, Scott and I attended, it was about 50 people were there. It was a Holiday Inn, I call it Holiday Inn West. There were a number of speakers, and they talked on such subjects as the right to know law. And I have a bunch of questions about that. Also, the Sunshine Act. I'm just curious how we deal with that. And they also talked about under the Right to Know Act, everything is presumed public. Everything we do is presumed public. And so your email is public information. Your phone is public information. And one of our guests months ago suggested we all get LCA email addresses and correspond with each other on LCA business through those email addresses. So if anyone would ever file a right to know, it would simply be a question of handing over the information on that address, as opposed to dumping your entire. If you ever got to that, I'm just saying, they talk a lot about that. At some point, you get a number of people who are very aggressive about what public officials do, and they really start dragging the nets, and you can end up having to dump your whole email, have somebody go through it and vet it, and like, oh, you know, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So that's something we may want to talk about at some point. Also retention of records, the legal retention policy. How long is it? And do we execute it? In other words, when we hit the date, do we dump the records? And if you have a reasonable retention policy, that's fine. But it must meet the smell test. It can't be a day and a half. It has to be a reasonable amount of time. The other thing that was suggested was, have we all read our bylaws and our corporation documents? Do we know what they say, they don't say, board members? I have no idea what they say. So that's the rules in which we all operate.
That should be in your board document.
I'm sure that is.
Board packet.
Right.
Yes, we'll have bylaws.
This was suggested, quickly, the conflicts of, ethics was discussed, conflicts of interest. Are we really, really getting that information every year on a timely basis?
Which reminds me, it is due to Brad, so each one of you should
Follow-
have gotten your paperwork to send in.
And,
I've gotten some of them already.
anyway, it was a pretty good information session. A lot of questions, but it makes you think about, are we really operating on the edge of the curve here? Especially when it comes to documents, because this stuff can get in the way. I mean, now it's electronic, so it's much easier. But you only have to keep that so long, and then you can dump it. And so I don't know what our policy is.
We have records retention timelines for certain kinds of records.
We've been following, the state has established timelines.
Yes.
Through the Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission, and that's what we tend to follow. But to be honest, like the city has a very,
Public utility commission, that's what.
the city has a very specific, the city government has a very specific process. And so like, they actually destroy documents on a regular basis. They come before the council and they say, we have permission to destroy this, and they destroy all of them from like before that. We don't do any of that. We just keep everything except for accounting, which runs out of space, and they get rid of things after 7 years, which is kind of the guidelines. But we have talked numerous times about the whole document management process, which is really important when you come to things like discovery.
And I think the email issue becomes very complicated for us because we have every employee with their own way of filing and sorting. So I think that's something that is probably
It also was mentioned, an open records officer.
Yes.
that's correct.
Oh,
Yeah, I just said that.
I'm sorry.
That was the opening. And we follow that pretty closely. And as you said, everything's a public record. And then there's a whole series of exceptions.
Yes.
It's like 20 of them or something. There's a whole bunch. So you kind of first go and look at these exceptions to see if something fits in. And that's a change in Pennsylvania law. It probably is 10 years ago now, but it seems like yesterday, that they changed that law and it was changed up. And the requirements, like I have to respond within 5 days, telling them whether or not, and time, if we can't provide it in 5 days, when we can provide it, blah, blah, blah. We have a whole policy on that if you're interested with the charges and all that type of thing. So we try to be very diligent about that. But it hasn't tended to be a big issue for us at LCA, but I know from all the municipal lawyers, seminars and stuff that have gone through the country, for cities of any size, it becomes a major issue. They have entire departments of 3 or 4 people that are hired just to do this day in and day out. So it's become a very big expense of the government. And very often, the requests aren't really coming from public citizens. They're coming from businesses who are trying to glean some kind of an edge. They're coming from all kinds of sources. You can't, under Pennsylvania law, you can't ask why you're asking for it. So a lot of time can be spent on that. And we have seen an increase since we took over the city division. Definitely, I have way more requests coming in than we did when I was just in suburban.
Anyway, that's kind of
Thank you. Encourage anybody else that wants to go to those conferences. There's another one coming up yet. Do we know when the next one is?
About twice a year, I think.
They move around the state.
Yeah. But they usually have one in Lehigh Valley, so.
Is that the one you attended at the
Holiday.
One of our newer staff members also
Yes.
attended and
Yes,
felt
she did.
that it was very valuable for her to
Yeah.
understand
That's
the
what I mentioned.
rules that we go under.
There's not going to have the one in Hawaii.
It's funny, she came back and asked me all the same questions Ted was asking. They really must have pushed those points, because those are all the same questions she came back
Sorry.
and asked.
Oh, that's great.
All right.
Well, I'd like to keep the topic of whether we're going to have our emails, our LCA at
I think that's a
email. I think that's something if we even have, I mean, I feel I would want to have one. And I would hope, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I think we ought to move on that. And I don't even know what it takes to move on it right now.
We can certainly do that. I did ask our IT manager about how that would work, and it's, especially now with everyone's smartphones and all that, it's fairly easy to do. If we give you the right credentials, you can sign up for it and be, in touch over your phone or whatever, or through a webmail type account that we would link to it.
Is our consensus then that we're going to do that?
Well, one thing I did want to just offer up is that I know one of the board member who's not here, Nina, was hoping to bring forth some of her ideas on the transparency issues and those topics, and she'll be back at the next meeting, so we might talk about all of the collective ideas at that point. The email addresses, I mean, if you all want them, we can get those set up. That's not an issue, doesn't.
Yeah. What do you want?
Yeah.
Yes,
I would like
yes.
it. Like easier to
Yes, yes, do it,
Okay.
do it. Thank you.
That's easy enough to do. I'll send you all instructions on how to get into your email.
Okay. We'll give you a day or
It's pretty quick.
two. Okay, any other,
I have a question.
Yes, Bedley.
weird weather pattern, snow, rain, has affected the systems? Because we normally have, well, we got 31 inches of snow, but all at one time. And does that affect the systems? I know,
When it melts all at once.
Yeah.
that's what I mean, that, and we didn't have a lot of it except once. So,
The wastewater plants have taken some abuse, there's no doubt. There was high flows at Pines Island, there was a couple of suburban sites that had some bypasses, so, and we'll be talking about that at the next one, when I do my operational report with the numbers of SSOs that we saw and whatever. So yeah, unfortunately, wastewater took much more of the brunt than water did.
Were those sewer system overflows from that really heavy?
The rain, not snow melt, yeah.
Ford, I never saw so much surface water so quickly.
And the ground was saturated.
Yeah, I mean, it was, roads
Yeah.
were flooded everywhere.
Yeah, it was
And that-
unreal.
yeah.
John, you had another question?
Yeah, just on that email topic, just if I could interject that way, if you could get individual emails and also one collected one, so that if somebody wants to contact everybody for whatever reason, they can just hit everybody kind of a thing, LCA at whatever, and it goes to every
The
board
commissioners
member.
have that, they have at least like that.
Yeah. In the school district and stuff. It's handier than trying to like do the same thing, cut and paste every board member in their own individual things. But having an individual one is also nice in case you just want to get in contact with one specific person.
Okay, thank you for that thought. All right, we're going to go, now we're going to go into executive session to thus discuss potential litigation. I don't think there's going to be any actions taken beyond this. So